Diddy is behind bars, but he is enrolled in 2 classes in jail. A class for drug abuse and one for domestic violence.
Domestic violence. These are programs that are offered by the federal government in the prison system for inmates, and he is enrolled in both of these programs. He's also, we're told, in therapy separate from those 2 programs. And all of these things that he's doing, typically for one reason, to look good for the judge.
Well, it's important because sentencing comes up October 3rd. And Diddy, look, everything that I know tells me that he will get between 1 and 2 years. And I think it's going to be closer to 1. Prosecution is asking for 4. That's just not going to happen for a Mann Act violation. So if that's right, look, he wants to get the lowest he can get, and I think it's going to be between that 1 and 2 range. To get the 1, I think he's got to show the judge that he is taking his misdeeds seriously.
Right. And by the way, we know that even when the judge said that he was not going to let him out on bail pending sentencing, one of the things he mentioned was his violence. We've seen his violence. So he knows that this is an issue for the judge.
And the defense conceded it.
Right. So that's something he definitely has to address. And that's what he's doing with this program.
I mean, Charles, he doesn't have to address it, but he is addressing it. And, this might help him with regards to his sentence. Maybe the judge might sentence him to lesser time because he's working on himself.
But Jamie, you know what the complication here is that he's been found not guilty on the charges that relate to drug use and domestic violence. That there was no conviction using force, fraud, or coercion in these 3 ways, and drugs. The Cassie video was off the table. The only thing he's been convicted of is taking a prostitute across state lines for the purpose of prostitution.
But can't the judge consider all of the testimony in the that was presented at the trial?
But the defense is going to say he was found not guilty on those things. So it's really kind of an interesting...
There's that, but there's another side of this. And Jamie, you've been working on this story for 5 days now to lock this down. But what was there was one key word, one of the sources you spoke to. You remember what that word was?
Yeah, redemption.
Yeah, because that's the other part of this, that this is Diddy looking at my life after prison, because now that he knows he's not going to be locked away for decades, not going to be locked away for the rest of his life.
His eyes locked on the judge, as if he still couldn't process the weight of what he just heard. This wasn't supposed to be the end. Not for him. Not for the man who once ruled the music industry like a king atop a throne of platinum records and dark secrets. So, a lot of you have been asking what I use for my skin. I'm 41, a mom of 2, and people always ask how I have glowing skin and so much energy. I don't do 10-step routines, and I definitely don't have time for self-care all day. But I do take these Goli Superfruit gummies. They're packed with bamboo shoot extract and vitamins A, C, and E that support collagen production, skin elasticity, and that healthy glow we all want. My skin feels smoother, looks brighter, and honestly, I just feel more confident. And the best part, they're vegan, gluten-free, taste amazing, and actually make me feel good. Links in the description. Use Amazon for quick delivery, or grab it from Goli's site with code cellophane. But the gavel had come down, and with it, everything he thought he'd buried came crashing through the courtroom doors. And as the judge read out the prison sentence, long, cold, and devastating, Diddy finally broke. Not in a dramatic scream at the sky kind of way. It was subtler, more tragic. The kind of break that looks like someone's spirit detaching from their own body. His eyes weren't just glassy. They were empty. Like everything that made him feel untouchable had just been ripped out piece by piece in front of the world. People talk about karma, about balance catching up eventually. And here it was, not as a whisper, but as a full-blown collapse of an empire built on shadows. The jury's decision had been a split verdict.
Hearing today, sort of. We got to talk about why. Well, Judge Arun Subramanian had sent a tentative October 3rd sentencing date for Diddy on his convictions of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Remember, that's what he was convicted of. He was acquitted of racketeering conspiracy, and he was acquitted of the 2 sex trafficking counts. But he was convicted of these prostitution charges. And at one point, there was reporting that defense counsel for Sean Combs and prosecutors, they had then agreed to switch the date to September 22nd. And we thought, okay, because today's hearing was supposed to be about expediting the October hearing. Then they agreed to September 22nd. Now apparently it's back to October 3rd. This is all over the place. Very confusing. We'll get it straightened out. I gotta say it's interesting because Combs' defense counsel had originally stated last week, when it was the October 3rd date, that they wanted that sentencing expedited, meaning they wanted it to happen sooner. And one of the things that Sean Combs' attorney, Mark Agnifilo, had said was, quote, the mother of some of his children had passed away many years ago. These kids, the 2 daughters here sitting in the middle of Your Honor's second row, don't have a parent. Obviously referring to the death of Kim Porter in 2018, mother of Christian, Jesse, Delilah, Quincy. And by the way, remember Sean Combs was denied bail, so it wasn't even like he got to go home after the verdict. But clearly they wanted this expedited. They want his sentencing to happen as quickly as possible. They want him out of jail. They want him out of prison as soon as possible. And also it's interesting because prosecutors, they need time for the pre-sentencing investigation and report. Basically, that's when a probation officer interviews the defendant, looks at the history, the background, childhood, education, employment, criminal history, finances, the mental and physical health of the defendant. There are interviews that are conducted with family and friends. The officer looks at various court and school records, employment records, financial records. The officer could speak to the victims in the case, law enforcement that were involved in the investigation, provide all of this information in a report to the judge, because here the judge is going to have a lot of discretion when it comes to the sentence. What could a sentence look like? Well, prosecutors indicated in a filing that before even doing a pre-sentencing investigation, Combs is looking at 51 to 63 months, a little over 4 to 5 years in prison. The defense seems to be pushing for 21 to 27 months, so a little over 1.5 to 2 years. But remember, Combs has been sitting in federal lockup since September at the MDC, so if he gets time served, he really wouldn't be spending that much time behind bars. Now, of course, the extremes. When you talk about transportation to engage in prostitution, the maximum for each count is 10 years in prison. You stack them together, you get 20 years. Okay, based upon the facts in this case, it seems highly unlikely he would get that much. Other side, you get the idea. There's no minimum for this charge. So could he get time served and walk free? Also seems unlikely in that you're dealing with multiple.
Not guilty on a few of the most sensational charges, but enough stuck that the sentence handed down was nothing short of brutal. And the courtroom didn't just gasp because of the length of the sentence. It gasped because the judge didn't hold back. There was no mercy, no grace, no celebrity privilege. What Diddy received was a statement that no amount of fame or money could protect you once the facade crumbles. And crumble it did. Over weeks of explosive testimony, what had once been murmurs in the industry turned into chilling confirmations. Witness after witness walked into that courtroom and peeled back the curtain. The parties, the coercion, the manipulation, the fear. Stories that had once been dismissed as tabloid fodder were now being told under oath. Under the cold fluorescent lights of a courtroom where the past couldn't be swept under a rug made of platinum plaques. Then there was the turning point. The moment that sealed Diddy's fate wasn't some hidden video or smoking gun. It was the raw, shaking voice of someone who used to be close to him. Someone who once benefited from the empire, but could no longer stay silent. That voice didn't just give testimony. It gave the jury a glimpse into a world most people had only speculated about.
Who would monitor him. It was interesting because the prosecution at one point had said it's not fair, right? He's a wealthy celebrity who's providing a bail package that other people in his similar position wouldn't be able to provide. Now, the defense was like, well, the only reason we're presenting a package like this is because of what he's accused of and his wealth and his resources. We have to address that in a certain way. The reason it's so extensive is because of his wealth and resources. That bail package that was put forward was rejected by the court. What did you make of that?
Well, at that time, the judge was looking at the RICO Act and sex trafficking. So, Puffy was looking at possibly 25 years, or more, depending on what the guidelines were based on if he was convicted. So at 55 years old, at that time, it's almost a life sentence. So, and he has a lot of wealth and he had a private plane. So the judge was looking at that. Plus, in the federal system, they look at danger to the community. Where in the state system, they're not allowed to look at that. They look at risk of flight. So I think with all the letters behind that were coming in that we were not really privy to from a lot of the alleged victims, I think the judge made a decision that, hey, this is not going to be sufficient enough. I thought that at the end, he kind of, when we brought in our private security team and we showed him who was going to be doing it, we did Sam Bankman-Fried. So we knew that, we would be completely covered on that end. And we gave him the idea of there would be no Wi-Fi in the building that we were looking at, and that he would not be able to connect with anybody but his legal team and his family. We thought at that point that maybe we had a chance, but at the end, the judge denied it, and that's where we stood. And now on this case coming forward, after the convictions, after he wasn't convicted, at the end, we didn't know what he was going to do. So, when Mark reached out to me afterwards, we started thinking about putting another bail package together.
And what is that bail package and by the way, is this a bail package that you think could be submitted again even after the judge just denied bail?
Well, the judge denied bail based on the statute, and the statute stated a certain amount of information that part of the Mann Act that, was not eligible for bail. There are certain circumstances that can be done. We're going to regroup again. I know that they were going to go talk to Mr. Combs again and see what happens there. They have the October 3rd date. And, I don't know where he stood. As of the other day, he wanted to get out. I don't think anybody wants to be at MDC where he is. So, we're going to reconvene and see what happens, at a later date. We could go back with another package.
Would it require him to stay in New York? Would it be him to be, I know he wanted to go back to his property in Miami, Florida. And there's also an interesting question, I think, that his defense put forward.
The world behind the velvet ropes where the rules didn't apply and power was currency more addictive than anything sold in nightclubs or on street corners. Diddy tried to keep his composure. Day after day, as damning detail after damning detail spilled out into the room, he sat there stoic on the outside. But inside, you could see it eating at him. The tension in his jaw, the way his foot tapped nervously beneath the table. He thought he could get through it. He thought the machine, the money, the lawyers, the influence would hold the line. But when the jury came back, the room changed. Something in the air shifted. Even before the foreperson spoke, people could feel it. And then the words came. Guilty. On enough charges to put him behind bars for years, decades even. But it wasn't just the sentence that broke him. It was the swiftness. The judge didn't pause for breath, didn't allow the shock to settle. As soon as the verdict was confirmed, the sentence came barreling down like a freight train. That was the moment it all shattered. Diddy's shoulders slumped, his head dropped, and for the first time, he looked small, like the larger-than-life figure who dominated headlines and stages for decades had finally been stripped down to just another man facing consequences too heavy to carry. Behind him, his legal team looked dazed, shell-shocked. They'd banked on appeals, on loopholes, on reputation. But even they knew this wasn't just a loss. It was a message. The judge's words cut sharper than the sentence itself. Your influence didn't absolve your choices.
He was the IMF, president, and nobody knew if he was on his way going back to Greece to lend him X amount of money to get him out of trouble. Yet we had to find him an apartment in the city. We had to get him private security. I was dealing with his ex-wife now, coming in and giving me what I need to put a $5 million bail together. So, they're a little more demanding, and everybody's looking to me to make that, make it happen. The lawyer could get the bail, but at the end of the day, it's Ira Jellison that's running in, putting everything together, and the pressure. And I work in chaos all day long. That's my life. So, when it comes to chaos, that's my specialty.
You handle it well, though. You handle it quite well, given the chaos.
I have to.
Yeah.
If I, as I said before, if I want to, have a nice home, I want my kids to go to college, and I want things to happen. You got to do these things, and people rely on you.
Absolutely, and I think there's something to be said here, and it's important that you said it. Your reputation's on the line. So the idea of when we say, nebulous, how can we trust a private security team? I'm happy you clarified that. I want to get really practical here, realistically.
Shoot,
Sean
yes.
Combs is released on bail. Okay, let's say he's released. He's home confinement. What exactly is he allowed to do and not to do? Is he really there's someone's going to be watching him 24/7? They're going to make sure he has no iPad, no iPhone. Are there going to can he give directions to people like associates or other people that are involved? I mean, the concern, of course, is that even if he's out and he's around people, he can still shake things up a little bit. He can still get messages out. I guess the question is, what does it realistically look like for him? Does he sit in a room? Does he only confined to certain rooms day in and day out? Is he constantly watched on tape and all of his electronic devices are searched on him constantly? I mean, what does it look like?
Well, again, it's really up to the restrictions of the court.
Sure.
I mean, I have people out right now that are on ankle bracelets, and they can't go 400 feet. They can go 800 feet. They can go wherever depending on what the restrictions are. In Puffy's case, the way we were putting it to the judge and to the Southern District was, we were going to have a call log, so you could see who his calls were going to. We were going to try to take away his Wi-Fi in the building, which would have been a lot easy. We would have limited the people that would come see him. So at the end of the day, we had cameras inside the apartment that we were going to do, which our people were going to put up. And we were going to all let the government be able to get into that system to see who was coming in and out. Of course, there's privacy. So, we were going to make it very, very tight. Now, when you're incarcerated, and I have a lot of friends that I know that that are incarcerated. When people come to see you, if you want to pass a message, messages can get passed. We know that. So if he really wanted to do something incarcerated, he might be able to. If he really wanted to do something when he was out, he might be able to. I don't think that he would take a chance on something like that to risk what he's gone through over the last year. Again, opinion on my end, based on being 30 years in the industry, you just got possibly your life back. You were facing 30 years incarcerated possibly, and now you're going to take a chance on something like that. But again, no, I'm not in someone's brain. I can't determine how people think. There's a lot of people that feel they're above the law. So I don't know how Puffy thinks.
Your fame didn't erase your actions. And this courtroom doesn't play by industry rules. Cold, precise, unforgiving. The kind of message that made sure no one watching would mistake the outcome for leniency. The reactions from the public were instantaneous. Social media exploded. Half the world stunned that Diddy had actually been sentenced. The other half shouting that it still wasn't enough. Some mourned the fall of a mogul they once idolized. Others celebrated, seeing justice as finally catching up to a man who had dodged accountability for far too long. Celebrities posted cryptic stories, subtweets flew, and the internet turned into a battlefield of opinion, memory, and reckoning. And then there was 50 Cent. As expected, he didn't stay silent. Mere hours after the verdict, his post hit Instagram. A single photo of a crumbling throne. No caption. He didn't need one. Everyone understood. For years, he'd hinted, prodded, thrown shade, and pointed fingers. Now he had nothing left to prove. He was the specter in the background, the man who predicted it all, watching the final curtain fall. Inside the courtroom, though, Diddy wasn't thinking about memes or rival jabs. He was still in shock. As the baifs moved to take him into custody immediately, the reality hit him like a brick wall. There would be no walking out that door, no return to the mansion, no damage control press release. The chains weren't metaphorical anymore. They clinked. They locked. And as they led him away, he turned back for a second. Maybe out of instinct, maybe in disbelief. But no one met his eyes. Not his lawyers, not the reporters, not the gallery of spectators who had once worshipped his name. All that remained was silence. The kind that doesn't fade when the door shuts behind you. And for Diddy, it was only the beginning.